Sometimes transformation doesn't look like a breakthrough. It feels like disintegration. You wake up one morning and sense something's off. It's not a crisis, not quite depression, just a subtle unease, a quiet dread creeping in like fog. Your job feels empty. Your friendships seem hollow. Your daily routines suddenly lack meaning. The structure of your life, once solid, begins to unravel. You're not burned out, not having a typical crisis. And no, it's not Mercury retrograde. This is something deeper. What Carl Jung understood, and what few talk about, is that this stage is what mystics and psychologists call the dark night of the soul. And here's the truth no one says out loud. This stage is sacred, but it doesn't feel sacred. It feels like you're dying while still breathing. The term dark night of the soul was coined by 16th century mystic St. John of the Cross, but Jung gave it profound psychological depth. He saw it as a necessary spiritual psychological passage where your ego shatters so your true self can finally begin to emerge. That's why it hurts, because the ego, the personality you've built to survive, to be liked, to function, has to fall apart. Only then can something real grow in its place. And no, it's not glamorous. It's not peaceful. It's not aesthetic. It's crying in your car for reasons you can't explain. It's feeling emotionally hollow while everyone else seems fine. It's questioning your entire existence. But beneath the chaos, something meaningful is happening. Your false self is dissolving. Your soul is taking over. And this is where it gets disorienting, because the world doesn't understand this process. We live in a culture that rewards productivity, positivity, and certainty. So when you start falling apart, people don't see it as sacred. They call it dysfunction. But what if this collapse is not a malfunction, but an initiation? What if the destruction of your identity is actually the soul doing deep inner renovation? Jung believed your soul knows when it's time to burn old structures down. Not as punishment, but as preparation. You're not being broken. You're being made whole. So if you're in that space, feeling lost, misaligned, disconnected from the world, know this: you're not broken. You're becoming. This is the fire, and the fire is refining you. In this video, we're diving into what's really going on during the dark night of the soul, and why your breakdown may be your breakthrough in disguise. Let's begin with a misunderstood truth. Awakening doesn't start with light. It begins with silence, and not the peaceful kind. It's the heavy, suffocating kind that erases everything you thought you were. Your identity, your beliefs, your ambitions, everything begins to shift. Carl Jung called this process individuation. Becoming whole by integrating the hidden, unconscious parts of yourself, especially your shadow. But before wholeness comes collapse. Because to meet the real you have to let go of the you that was crafted by survival. The version of you built on fear, performance, and approval. Here's the problem. You were never taught how to face the shadow. You were taught how to function, how to succeed, how to be likable, but no one taught you how to grieve the life you thought you had to live. So when your career, your values, or your relationships stop resonating, you start to feel like you're losing your mind. But you're not losing your mind. You're losing the illusion. Think of it like this. Your psyche has been holding up a mask for years, and now it's exhausted. Your soul is pulling you inward, home. But the journey home doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like exile. Old wounds return. Grief, anger, shame, even fears that you've wasted your life. But these feelings, they're not always from the present. They're echoes from childhood. Emotions that were buried in your body finally surfacing. Not to torment you, to free you. That's what most people don't understand about awakening. It's not about bliss. It's about depth. Jung said it best. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The dark night is like compost, the rot of the false self becoming fertile ground for truth. And yes, it feels like chaos, but beneath that chaos, something intelligent is moving through you. You're not breaking down. You're breaking open. You're not regressing. You're remembering. You're not failing. You're finally feeling. That's not weakness, that's healing. Eventually, something shifts. The pain doesn't disappear, but it becomes familiar. You stop asking, when will this end? And start asking, what is this trying to teach me? That's the pivot point. The pain becomes a portal. Not punishment, not karma, but revelation. Here's the twist that Jung understood. Your lowest moment can become your most powerful initiation. Not a motivational slogan, a metaphysical truth. Because light is not something you escape to. It's something you earn by meeting your darkness, not pretending to heal, but sitting in the mess with fierce honesty. This is what Jung meant by holding the tension of opposites. Darkness and light, pain and purpose, suffering and evolution. He knew the psyche transforms not by avoiding discomfort, but by moving through it consciously. And here's the paradox. When you feel your pain fully, it begins to change, not because you fixed it, but because you stopped running. Jung once said, "Neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering." In other words, all the overthinking, anxiety, and spiritual bypassing, it's a cover-up, a distraction from deeper truths you were never allowed to feel. When you stop avoiding your pain, the healing finally begins. So what is the dark night of the soul? It's the soul-clearing house, burning away what's false, dismantling the masks, and making space for something real. Your suffering has intelligence. It reveals where you abandoned yourself, where you stayed small, where you numbed instead of felt. And in that raw awareness, something beautiful begins to rise. Not enlightenment, but truth. Not peace, but clarity. And that clarity heals. The wound becomes the womb. The collapse becomes the rebirth. The shadow becomes the doorway to your divinity. So if you're hurting right now, don't rush, don't run. Sit with it. Let it speak. The pain isn't the enemy. The silence around the pain is. Once you stop trying to quiet it, you begin to hear something underneath everything else. Your soul. Not the ego, not the fixer voice, but the gentle whisper that says, let it all fall apart. There's something more honest waiting. That's the beginning of rebirth. But here's where many get stuck. Right before that moment, when the pain becomes too much, we numb it. With food, with work, with scrolling, even with spirituality. But here's the cold truth. If you numb the pain, you numb the transformation. Pain is sacred data, a signal that something old is ready to leave, and something new wants to live. So how do you survive the dark night without being consumed? You feel. You cry. You break open in safe places. You stop pretending. You stop fixing. You allow. You talk to someone, a therapist, a friend, even nature. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, things begin to change. Your breath deepens. Your mornings soften. You laugh again. That's rebirth. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's true. One day you realize you no longer crave what numbed you. You stop seeking validation from those who never really saw you. You're no longer running. You're living. That's real awakening. Not escaping the human experience, but embracing it with all its rawness, softness, scars, and sacredness. Jung said the goal is not perfection. It's wholeness. The dark night strips away the lies so you can meet your truth. And while the process is brutal, the result is freedom. The kind where you belong to yourself. The kind where discomfort doesn't scare you. The kind where your joy is grounded, not grasping. You begin to see the world differently. Colors brighter. Silence deeper. Your own presence, finally home. Because you met yourself in the dark and didn't run. That's the initiation. That's the soul's truth. That's the light that was never broken. So if you're there right now, standing in the rubble of your former life, you're not crazy. You're being reborn. And yes, it's messy, but it's sacred. Before you go, have you ever faced a season where everything felt like it was falling apart, only to realize later it was the start of something real? Share it in the comments. Your story could be someone else's survival map. And if this kind of soul-deep content resonates, hit subscribe, turn on the bell. This channel is here for the seekers, the feelers, and the ones waking up to something real. Welcome back to yourself. You made it through the dark. And from here, everything changes.